Today's stop loss cluster video for the QuasiDB service, 24th of February. Bitcoin MR2 48822. This could come into play. We have seen a little resurgence on the very small time frame. So this is a good level to trade off at 48822. It's quite a wide stop, but it might hold, and we are above monthly pivot. But yeah, it's a bit of a gamble, really. Ideally, you'd wait for more green cells on the FX multimeter. On looking at that from a technical perspective. So, also it's interesting what will happen with this when the S&P falls as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with this S&P chart. We've got a very healthy bounce again. We had one yesterday, we've got one today, and it's looking like buy the dip scenario. The more people do it, then it's going to become worse. So enjoy it while you can. When the majority finally get round to the idea of buying it, then we'll top out. And like we saw at that COVID peak. Yeah, there we go. And yeah, they basically went, they switched sides, and they actually went bullish, and they were buying dips. And the conspiracy theory part of my brain is thinking that this was part of the reason why it fell, obviously with the supply and demand issues, and obviously the multiple millions of people dying and stuff. But it was a strange coincidence how when the retail guys finally flipped on their sentiment, about a week later it fell, and they really tried to buy it, and then it fell, and then they got completely exhausted, stopped out massively, and then they decided to short it, and they sold it in a big way, and they continued to do so, and haven't gone back since about here. They shorted it on average, and we've come up all this way. So what happens is that these bears, they get liquidated, and then the new bears come in, and so you have to think of it like in steps of consequence, where these guys, well, basically they die, they get exterminated, and then the new bears come in, and then they get exterminated. But what happens is that these new guys aren't aware of what's happened prior. So if somehow that information got out, and so these new bears were like, oh, and they could talk to each other, and they knew what their peers were doing, then they wouldn't have got involved, and they would have gone long, you see. But because these guys got exterminated, and because they're just simply individual traders, but en masse, they haven't really got a voice. But if they had a voice, then they would say, well, actually don't do this, we try to do this and we got stopped out. But there's no lines of communication between the bears. So the new guys come in, thinking that they're being smart, and of course it comes up to punish them. The new bears come in, comes up. So it's just a matter of just exterminating bears as it comes up. And when it finally flips, and they decide, okay, maybe it is going to come up, at that point we'll top out. And at the moment, we're not close to topping out because of the sentiment. So for that reason, we need to be careful with our dollar and yen trades. So just a little sentimental view of what's happened with the S&P and that line of communication breakdown of the bears. And so as long as they remain bearish, we'll come up, okay? And it was just a funny, strange coincidence that coincided with the COVID crash. I'm not saying it fell because of sentiment, but the two together, the macro and the sentiment, it was too much. And so we came down. So that's something to bear in mind. And you'll know if we're risk on or risk off by subscribing to the QuasiDB service, or just look at your sentiment, and then you should be fine. AJ, see, we're coming up to take stops above because S&P is rallying. 84.54, 83.67. We are a buy, and quite strong on the moving average trend. The signal saying to wait, which is interesting. AU, again, this is coming up because S&P. 79.61, 78.45, sideways, and we're a buy. Okay. EA, it's very skewed on the sentiment. 153.40, and oh no, 15269. Got slow to load. EU 121880, and one below is 12. Actually, I think it's actually 121. So yeah, we put quite a lot of analysis on the technical group today, and it looked like it had this bearish wedge, and it had support, and it coincided with a stop loss cluster, and so there's an optimal trade entry at the stop loss cluster, and so we rallied. So it's definitely worth checking your SLCs. Remember to use the QuasiDB code as well at the checkout, and you get humongous savings. So definitely get the SLC indicators; they're just like invaluable. And the SLC above is at monthly pivot, so remember to, that's going to be like a key level. Signal center buy, and we're buying the sentiment. GU 14142 and 14050, and we're strong on all time frames, and we're buying the sentiment, but we're saying to wait on the signal. This level here is MR3, so we have overdone it by going over MR3. Any symbol, anything, if we go over MR3, it's a bit of a warning sign. So maybe we'll come and get those stops, and then we should fall. Don't forget what I was saying about the pound bubble as well. So this looks like a likely contender, and then we'll have the resistance. NU, I think we actually took out the stop loss cluster. Yeah, we did. So cheeky. 7403 and 7301. Signal center buy. Well, it was, and we were buying the sentiment, but we're very skewed, and it wouldn't open a signal because we're getting close to the 20%. In fact, my FX book 7%. So there's no way the QuasiDB system would get close to the Kiwi dollar because of that. It's way too extreme. So it would only open after 20%. And so that's that. And it's good because what actually would have happened prior to this new tweak is that it would have opened a Kiwi USD short this week. And look, so this new change to the system is it's really, really good. It's a great inclusion. I should have put it in a long time ago, but you just you're learning as you go. And it's a new, as far as I know, quite unique system based on sentiment and the bubbles. So it's all like sort of like a self-discovery, as like a process. So yeah, it's a good job it didn't trigger buy, because there would have been in some drawdown. Euro yen 12881, 12830. We're quite on a tear. There's that break. There's a signal saying to buy, and the signal saying to buy. So a lot of things are in agreement, and all everything relies on this weaker dollar so far. Pound yen 14996, and it's slow to load. 14915. Signal saying to wait. Sentiment saying to buy, and there's a little bit of a divergence on the 1 minute, but nothing too concerning. And that line there is MR3, which, like I said about the pound USD, is overextended technically. Look at your monthly pivot. We're up here, and there's your monthly pivot, so it's a bit bonkers. Dollar yen. And some supply there, so that's interesting. On above is 106.10 and 105.69. We're a buy, and it's very choppy. Signal saying to wait. That line there is MR1 at 105.57. Dollar CAD. One above, really going to get this stop loss cluster below, and one above is 125.46 and 125.19. You can just see, just going through how much reds there are. Like I was saying yesterday, how it was a gift in order to short the rips, because you look at your sentiment, look where your pivot is, and look at the signal. So yeah, it's a bit of a, I think that's likely. Actually, we're quite close. We're 5 pips away, so yeah, that's likely. And dollar Swiss. Now, this was a signal to go long. I closed at 2 o'clock UK time today. It looks like it was a good time to exit, so I'm really happy about that. We're going to cross into buy, which is interesting actually. We're very close to 50-50, so once it does, this will be interesting. We might get a bounce of MR2. We're coming to the end of the month, so don't forget we've got new pivots. I'll talk about gold. So I've got a bearish bias on this because the sentiment and the moving average trend is bearish too. And with the US yields going parabolic, this should be falling. So I think we know it's been a bit like manipulated. I think it should be falling, but falling harder. So I don't believe this rally. I think this is fake, and I think it's going to hit that resistance on the MA. This is the 14-day MA, and I think we should fall because these guys shouldn't really be making money. So just a quick one. Hopefully it was helpful about the S&P. And the key thing is to check the sentiment. You wouldn't ever enter a trade without the sentiment analysis because you're basically fighting a humongous force and you don't want to fight a monster. So try and get access to sentiment somehow. You can subscribe to QuasiDB and you get the on suite, and it's pretty good. It's very powerful, but there are other ways of getting the sentiment, like my FX book and FXCM, all stuff that I can give you for free to get access to, but I compile it in a quite nice, organised way. So I hope you have a good evening. I'll speak to you guys tomorrow, and yeah, and I'll let you know about the Auto Chartist plugin for MetaTrader 4 tomorrow. I'm still testing it today, and I'll be testing it tomorrow as well. So yeah, have a good one. I'll speak to you soon.